We need a little more beer in the back. All right, my name is Eric Lampman. I am in the Research and Development Department at Lake Champlain Chocolates. And yeah, here we go. Everybody likes chocolate too, right? Not just beer. So we've been doing this for a few years now, and we've been pairing chocolate and beer and just exploring, trying to find new flavors and learn about each other's products with some great brewers here in Vermont, especially right here in Burlington with some of our local friends. And that's what this tent's all about, and it's been an absolute success the last few years. So I'm not going to talk too much about the beer necessarily, because that's where they're the experts, but I will talk a little bit about the chocolates. So we're going to take you on a little journey here, and we're going to start with the Zero Gravity and Otter Creek. They had a collaboration with a Berliner Weiss, what you have in front of you, and we're pairing this with our dark chocolate sea salt caramel. I'm going to start by saying there are no rules to pairing beer and chocolate, and that's one of the rules we like. Don't restrict yourself. It's all about adventure. Get out there, taste different beers, taste different chocolates, and learn about what the food is you're eating. And the flavors will come, and you'll enjoy it all, and you may realize some things you like, some things you don't. So I'm going to hand it over to Paul Saylor from Zero Gravity, and he'll talk a little bit about this beer.
Hi, everyone.
The salt caramel.
Zero Gravity is up the hill at American Flatbread, and the beer that is in front of you is a beer that we brewed with Sean and folks from Otter Creek Wallivers, and it's one of the collaboration beers for the festival, this being the 20th anniversary. I think you probably all are aware of the significance of this festival, and the collaborations were our way of celebrating that. This style of beer is a really unique style because it's very light in terms of malt, almost no hops, and the sourness is the big defining character of this beer. This is a beer that they brew traditionally in Berlin, Germany. The way that they get the sourness traditionally is that they take the very first step of brewing is cooking. We take grain, we steep it in hot water, and out of that process, the enzymes, the natural enzymes in the grain, break down the starch in the grain into sugars, which is what we need to make beer. So that sweet water is our very first part of the process, creating that sweet water, and we call that the mash. And in Berlin, what they'll do is they'll mash in, which is the term for adding the hot water to the grain, and they let it steep, but instead of just letting it steep for an hour and a half like we do, they let it sit for 3 days. And they basically walk away, and or sometimes a little less, a little more, but it can sit as long as 3 days, and what happens during that time is sort of like a sourdough culture. It starts to ferment inside the mash tun, and it stinks up the whole place, not so good for brew pubs. At the end of that process, you have a sour liquid, and then you pump that into the kettle. Some places don't even boil it. They just send it on to fermentation, and they're done. What we did was we went through the first step of the mashing, and we moved the sweet wort into our kettle, and then we pitched lactic acid bacteria, which would be naturally found on the grain, and we let that fermentation happen in our kettle, and then finished it off with a brief boil and added Kolschist, which is a great yeast to finish the beer with. So that's the background of the beer, and what I would sort of point out about the beer and why it's, for me, really kind of outside the box as far as a pairing is that I've been working with beer and cheese for a long time and various other forms of pairing because we own a brew pub, and that's my focus is beer and food. I never really thought about chocolate as being something that would work with beer outside of stouts until I started working with these guys from Lake Champlain, and it has really changed how I think about beer and the flavors in beer. And what I would suggest you do as you're trying some of these pairings is look for that elusive third flavor that comes out of these flavors working together. If you take a bite of the chocolate and kind of work it around and then follow it with the beer, see what happens in the finish, see what lingers and what flavors come out of that. I was excited about in this pairing. We worked for close to 2 hours on different chocolates and beers.
Tough job.
Yeah.
Very tough job.
Exhausting. But at the end of that, this one stood out, and for me it was because in a lot of cases when you're working with beers or wines and food, it's about aromas and flavors that are based on aroma, but this pairing was much more essential. It was about the zones of the tongue that deal with quantitative flavor, salt and sour and sweet. And those three different qualities come into play, and they cut each other. The term cutting in pairing is when you have something that might be a cloying flavor or something that's lingering on your tongue, and the beer or wine comes along and clears your tongue. That's called cutting. And so as I'm taking a bite of the chocolate and letting the beer interact with it, salt comes into focus and then goes away, and then the sweetness comes into focus and the sourness, and all those just go back and forth. And then kind of rising out of that for me was a sort of a sweet caramelized milk flavor that I think is coming from the caramel. So that was my associations, and I'll let Eric chime in. And how did you all like it? Did you think it was a good pairing?
Is that a winner? Thank you, Paul. And I did skip over this right before we started. Is one thing we recommend when you taste beer and chocolate is to try the beer first and then the chocolate, and then also do the reverse, because sometimes you get some different interaction with what's going on. Carbonation may do things differently, or the aftertaste with some of the fats in the chocolates and the caramels. So these chocolates are at great temperature right now. They're a little warm and they're super soft, so the flavors should be at their peak. The sea salt caramel for us is a real traditional caramel that we've made for a number of years, and the whole sea salt blast out there across the country is just made this product that much more forefront. So great cooked caramel, dairy notes that Paul referred to. I think they really just got boosted a bit by that sourness and that lactic sour play with the beer. So a great beer, Paul, and I think a lot of people obviously enjoyed it. We're going to move on to talk with Russ, Vermont Pub and Brewery. They've brewed Lake Champlain Chocolate Stout with us in collaboration. This was a pilot brew that they started, and it finally made it to full production. And they used some cocoa nibs that we roasted up at our facility, which is a new project for us that will be coming out in the form of a new bean to bar chocolate bar in the next month or so. So I'll hand it over to Russ, and we're going to pair this with a vanilla truffle, which is the one with the white top here. A real quick thing about the truffle, we're using a lot of butter. We all like butter here, right? Heavy cream. We all like heavy cream. And some good dark organic chocolate, all organic ingredients, and Madagascar bourbon vanilla as well. So you'll see a play of the vanilla throughout this. This is just a real chocolate lovers pairing right here. So I hope you enjoy.
Yeah, hey everyone, thanks for coming. I'll tell you a little bit about the beer and the history of the beer, how it evolved. We originally were brewing a milk stout, trying to make very sweet, full-bodied stout. Then in collaboration with the Lake Champlain Chocolates, we wanted to bring in some chocolate flavors that you don't really find in certain malts. There are such things as chocolate malts, but we weren't quite getting it. Meeting with Eric, we discovered cocoa nibs. Cocoa nibs are the pod of the chocolate. He roasted some for us, and we ground it up and mixed it in. And what we do is we take our milk stout. The lactose of the milk stout is unfermentable, leaving a sweetness. Then the cocoa nibs kind of are enhanced and carried through on the palate with that. With the vanilla truffle, the vanilla kind of enhances the chocolate on top of that. We're all used to having chocolate with vanilla in it. These are two that there's no vanilla in the chocolate, but the vanilla from the cordial blends it together and really enhances all of the chocolate in it.
That truffle right now is so soft. It's perfect, and it's really good. Thank you, Russ. It's a great beer. I think a lot of people are enjoying that beer up in Burlington. So,
oh, on one side note, cocoa nibs we found are very troublesome in a brewery. They got clogged in every valve and every tubing and every beer line. We perfected that, but the first time it was a lot of trouble.
We'll learn from that for the future. Everybody like that? I think that's just a chocolate hit right there. All right, we're gonna move on to the infamous Heady Topper from The Alchemist. A favorite here in Vermont, sought out, sold out every time, hard to find. We're passing that along here, and we've got Jim from the brewery who's going to talk a little bit about that. One thing I want to mention with this is we've got two chocolates paired with this. We have a little cup here for most of you with two dark chocolate panned almonds. Panned means we've basically just tumbled them in a big globe to cover them with thin layers of chocolate. And that's just a really, really ancient style of making M&Ms, essentially. So that's how they're made. And secret's out. And then we've also got, I don't actually have one here. I think it fell through the cracks. The sliver piece that looks like a long stick is an orange rind. So we hand cut orange rinds. We candy them in a sugar syrup, and then we let them dry for an extensive period of time, multiple days, get them to the right consistency, and then we enrobe them in dark chocolate. It's totally full of citrus, and we've got a citrus and bitter flavored beer. So I'll let him talk about the beer. So we're going to do 2 pairings there with both of those, a little bit different on each of the chocolates. So I hope you enjoy.
The Heady complements this chocolate in multiple ways, and I would say the easiest one is the orange and the hop relation, because all these varieties of amazing American hops truly have an orange character, which is really easily relatable to this chocolate and beer. So that's what you're going to get first. On a different note, our yeast that we use in-house is like another profile that matches with this orange. It's really apricot-y, and it tastes like a hop. If you're not familiar with this yeast, if you've never had Alchemist beer over the years, it's not the hops that's creating that flavor profile, it's the yeast. And I think that's a really cool thing, that it matches on different levels. And yes, the bitterness and bitter chocolate it goes real well together, but the yeast profile, I think, is what speaks to me here with this orange and apricot and really lighter flavors, you know, because an IPA, this is a big, bold beer, and it can dominate food, but I think this works well with the food and the chocolate, because Heady can be delicate too. It, you know, even with its strength and ABV, it works on different levels, I think. And with this orange and this Lake Champlain chocolate, it's just amazing. So I hope you guys are enjoying the Heady out there and drink it up.
Yeah. So one thing we found that was really interesting going through this the other day is that this roasted almond flavor just really gets boosted by this beer when you eat it together. And it's really interesting. We found that there's somewhat compatible flavors, but they're also kind of, it's the surprise factor. That's what we're always kind of looking for when we do this, is how are you going to find that next pairing that you wouldn't expect? It wouldn't be the complementary orange to orange or citrus to citrus, but it's something a little different. It might be citrus and bitter, or it might be a sweet and sour, or it might be the hot and sour. We were talking about one of those that we were trying the other day at Zero Gravity. Just trying new things. Again, the unexpected might come through. That's what it's all about. So I hope you've all tried that, and I think I see the Wolliver's Oatmeal Stout starting to be passed, and I hope you haven't all tried to eat this one yet, because it might be all over your shirt. This last chocolate is it's a really, really loose caramel that is consisting of Wolliver's Oatmeal Stout, sugar, and water. That's it. Inside this chocolate shell, so it's going to explode when you bite into it. And it's all about celebrating one of our favorite stouts here in Vermont, which is the Oatmeal Stout. And we think the flavors of the Oatmeal Stout just totally come right through. And it's a really kind of, the chocolate piece is in itself the pairing. So the beer's extra. You're here for a brew fest, so enjoy the beer as well. But the chocolate part, take it all in one bite, because it's going to be all over you otherwise. So if you haven't eaten yours already and you still have it left, let's raise it. For 20 years of Brewfest, we've got a handful of years of beer and chocolate under our belt. Here's to many more. I hope you all have a great festival. Thank you to the brewers for the pairing. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much.